It was a pleasant morning in the spring of 1994. Toby the tram engine was bringing a dairy train up from Torreyreck on one of his usual runs. As he approached Maithwaite, he heard a girl's scream, closely followed by the squeal of car tyres. The first thing he saw was a green BMW speeding away down the road. The second was a teenage girl, sprawled on the ground, with her bicycle embedded in the crate next to her.
"Driver, we should stop and help her,"
Toby said. His driver agreed and Toby braked, stopping next to where the girl's friend was trying to help her up.
Ow! No, Kate, I can't get up.
"Are you alright?"
Toby asked. She had sounded as though she was in a bit of pain.
No, I can't stand on my right leg.
"It sounds like you'll need to go to hospital. We can take you up to the next station."
Thank you, Toby. I'd appreciate that. Kate, I need you to go get Aunt Bridget. Okay, Emily.
While Kate rode off to alert Emily's aunt, Toby's driver and fireman helped the injured teenager into Toby's cab. Toby set off again, while his fireman gave Emily whatever first aid he could. Toby could hear his fireman tell Emily that her leg was broken, and decided to make conversation. Hopefully, it would take her mind off her injuries.
"How did you know my name, Emily?"
Toby asked. He'd thought she looked slightly familiar.
Oh, my dad's told me about you.
"Does he work for the railway?"
Yes, he does.
"At Maithwaite Station?"
He works all over the railway, really, but he's based in Matford. I'm just visiting my aunt for the weekend.
"I see."
Toby replied. Silence fell for a moment.
"We're nearly there, Emily. How are you feeling?"
A little better, thanks to your fireman's first aid.
As he pulled into Maithwaite, Toby was relieved to see an ambulance waiting. Kate was waiting on the platform, next to a middle-aged lady. Toby guessed, correctly, that this was Emily's aunt.
Emily, what happened? I was riding with Kate on the side of the road. Then I heard a car approaching. I tried to get out of the way, but it clipped me. I didn't even see it.
"It was a green sedan,"
Toby said. Emily's aunt turned to him.
Did you see its registration plate?
"Yes, I think I can remember most of it. Just tell the police to talk to me."
Thank you, Toby.
Toby departed as Emily was helped into the ambulance. He hoped she would be all right. Toby couldn't help thinking that Emily's aunt had seemed familiar, too. She was probably just one of his regular passengers, he thought. When Toby arrived at Elsbridge, he found the yardmaster waiting, along with a policeman. "Toby, allow me to introduce Sergeant Jerry Halford. He's got a few questions for you."
"Of course. What do you need to know, Sergeant?"
"I understand you were a witness to a hit-and-run incident this morning."
"That's right, sir."
"Could you describe, in your own words, what happened?" Toby did so, while the sergeant took notes. After a few more questions, he nodded. "Thank you, Toby. I'll have this typed up into a statement, then you'll need to sign." He broke off abruptly. It was the first time he'd taken a statement from an engine. Toby chuckled.
"My driver should be able to sign it for me. That's what we did last time."
"Right, well, I'll get that sorted then." The policeman and yardmaster departed a moment later. Toby watched them go. He hoped they'd be able to catch whoever had been driving that car.
"What's up, Toby? You look a bit worried,"
Percy said, as he arrived a few moments later. Toby explained what had happened earlier.
"What did the car look like? Maybe we can keep an eye out for it, like we did with that missing girl in 1983.
Percy suggested. Toby thought for a moment, recalling the details he'd given the police.
"It was a green BMW. My driver said it was a 5 Series.
Toby said, and he gave Percy the car's license plate number.
"I'll keep a lookout, and I'll tell Thomas and Daisy about it too."
Toby grinned.
"Thank you, Percy."
"I'll see you later, Toby. I have to get these trucks back to Farquhar."
With that, Percy chuffed off. A couple of hours later, Toby was having a drink at Tidman. While his fireman filled his water tank, a diesel horn sounded out. Patrick brought his train in on the next track, stopping just next to Toby.
"I hear you had an eventful morning, Toby. Something about a girl who got hit by a car?"
Toby frowned.
"How did you hear about that?"
I told him, Toby, said a familiar voice. A moment later, the Fat Controller climbed down from Patrick's cab. Toby frowned.
Excuse me, sir, but I thought you were heading up to London today.
The engines knew the Fat Controller had caught the express up that morning. I was waiting for the train to London at Barrow when I heard about Emily. I knew Patrick was coming back this way, so I hitched a ride. Now, Toby was even more confused.
Do you know Emily, sir?
You could say that, Toby. She's my daughter.
Your daughter, sir?
Yes, my only daughter, and the youngest of my 3 children. The Fat Controller paused for a moment. When Bridget told me she'd been hit by a car, I feared the worst. It was a relief to hear she was safe. The Fat Controller glanced down for a moment, then back at the tram engine. Thank you, Toby.
I'm glad I could help, sir,
Toby replied modestly. The Fat Controller glanced over towards his car. I must be going. They're expecting me at the hospital. With that, the Fat Controller departed.
I thought Emily looked familiar. She said her father worked for the railway.
I think you'll be getting a new coat of paint soon, Toby. Fully deserved, in my opinion.
Thank you,
Toby replied. Later that afternoon, Percy was approaching Farquhar. He, Thomas, Toby and Daisy had been keeping their eyes out for the green BMW, but hadn't had much luck, so far. The wailing of a police siren greeted Percy as he emerged from the tunnel. Looking over, he saw a police car chasing another one along the road.
Look, that's a hit-and-run car driver. Quick, we can stop them!
Percy charged forwards, his regulator thrown open. He whistled loudly.
Stop! Hey, stop!
He called. Maybe they'd slow down if he got their attention.
Pull over!
Train and cars raced along, both trying to get ahead. Up ahead, a truck blocked half the road. Bertie was approaching from the other direction. What the? He exclaimed as the cars swerved into the yard's driveway. Percy saw his chance.
Driver, brakes!
His driver threw on the brakes. With a squeal, Percy stopped his train right across the driveway.
Officers, arrest those men!
Percy exclaimed triumphantly as police officers surrounded the stolen car.
Percy, what's going on?
Asked Thomas, who had been waiting at the station.
It's that hit-and-run driver Toby told us about. We've got him!
Thomas grinned.
Oh, well done. I'm sure Toby will be pleased to hear that.
A few hours later, Toby was waiting in the sheds when Percy and Thomas returned from their mail. It had been a busy afternoon, and the engines hadn't really had much of a chance to talk to each other.
Hello, Toby.
Percy said cheerily.
Hello, Percy. You're in a good mood.
That's because we've got that hit-and-run driver.
You mean he's been arrested?
Thomas and Percy quickly explained what had happened at Farquhar. Toby grinned.
That's good, quick thinking, Percy. I'm sure the Fat Controller would be proud of you.
Indeed I am, said a familiar voice. All 3 engines looked down to see the Fat Controller standing in front of them. Next to him, balanced on a crutch, was Emily, with her right leg encased in a plaster cast. Thomas and Percy, allow me to introduce my daughter, Emily Helen Hatt. Toby, I believe you met her this morning.
What? You didn't mention she's the controller's daughter?
I only found out after I saw you at Elsbridge.
The Fat Controller turned to Toby. Toby and Percy, both of you and Henrietta will be receiving new coats of paint. Both engines grinned, then Toby looked over at Emily.
I'm glad to see you out and about, Ms. Hatt. Pardon me, but shouldn't you be resting?
The Fat Controller chuckled. Emily insisted that I bring her down here.
I just wanted to say thank you, Toby. I really do appreciate what you did for me this morning.
Well, I wasn't going to leave you lying there.
Emily smiled and glanced over at Percy.
Percy, hearing that driver's been caught has made my day.
And mine, added the Fat Controller.
I'm glad to hear it, sir.
Percy replied modestly. Come on, Emily, "We'd better get home," said the Fat Controller. Emily smiled warmly at the engines.
I'll see you around.
Sure enough, Emily came to see the engines again after her cast had been removed. The Farquhar engines now see her often, and she usually rides in Toby's cab whenever she goes to visit her aunt at Maithwaite. He, Thomas and Percy are always happy to see her.